And I am gonna share a screen in 1 second as soon as I get all this other stuff off my, there we go. All right, so y'all should be able to see the Canvas page. This is the admin side that you're seeing. So again, it's got a little bit more than what y'all see, but this is basically sort of where everything happens, where things are uploaded. I'm gonna try to make it a little bit bigger as well too. I know that with this function, it's a little bit harder. We may lose some things when we do that, but it'll give you a good idea. Is that a little bit better? Okay. And let me make it to where I can see all of your lovely faces as well. There you go. All right, and I'll make it one more size bigger just in case. Is there anyone who's not had to use Canvas this last semester? I'm assuming that everyone has had to hop on board for that at some point or another, given this last semester. I think I saw one hand over at the Kerr crew. Okay. Your CD again, or ACD should have given you a link to it. You should have received an invite. If you are having trouble getting on, the one thing I would ask that you double check with your CD is how they entered you on. If they used your work email, your UNT student email, if they used your sort of student ID. So like for me, it's the TS 1045. If they use that, that might have an effect in terms of how you're allowed to log on. So however it is that they entered your information is how you should be logging on. You also should have received an invite for it via email. Start with that link for sure, as opposed to going to the Canvas site, because I know going through that link helps. And then if push comes to shove, we will resend invites again and again to make sure that you are able to get on. We have a couple of things that are pretty quickly coming up, so we just need to make sure that we're able to do that in order for you to know how to sort of work through this first, basically about a week and a half or so. So make sure you have access, make sure that you're able to get on, talk to your CD, ACD if you haven't gotten anything, and then we'll troubleshoot as we need to. So again, this is just the back side of things. It is pretty similar, the biggest difference being though that we can edit on this side. And then the nice part of that is that we can make those changes relatively live if we need to. So I know that I've had to do that at points in which a document has to be taken down or uploaded or changed. We can do that pretty instantaneously, allowing for sort of all the communication that needs to happen around that. I am going to go to the student view. I have to make this smaller again. Give me 1 second. So that we can navigate it from the way that you see it. So just a couple of differences here. Obviously, you can't edit things here. There's less stuff here on the left side with the menu to select from, but relatively it's the same. If you're returning, it's again pretty much the same as it was last year. Some adjustments in language, but the overall approach is pretty similar to what we've done for before. New folks, I'm going to walk through everything, and we're actually going to walk through at least the first, hopefully, 3 lesson plans for this semester so that everyone knows what to do. The 4th one I'm going to show you, but know that there's still some more lesson plans to add into that part of the syllabus. So you can start looking, but probably over this next week or so, a couple more will be uploaded for y'all to have a look at. So I'm not going to go through the 4th one, probably just show you what that looks like. So again, pretty similar to what you've probably had before for any online courses, or even for your in-person courses where they use this as a way to help guide you through the course. There's a nice little welcome here, and I'll go through all of that in a second. There is, of course, the syllabus. And the syllabus here that is on the left side is going to be different from the syllabus, the document that you saw yesterday. It's included in the welcome as well too. The reason that this is different is that it's based on due dates. So just know that there's going to be some differences in how this might sort of pop up for you based on the due dates. So for instance, this active passive program, this starts all the way basically at the first week of classes, but it isn't due until October the 2nd. So you're seeing it a little bit later on in the semester. Same thing here, the intentional conversations start all the way back in August, but it's not due until October the 9th. So don't necessarily be fooled by the due dates on here. I would refer back to the syllabus that's in the welcome that I showed you yesterday as a way to kind of keep track of things. In addition, because for some of the lesson plans, there are some later due dates based on class year. So first year students versus the returning students. The returning students usually have a little bit of a later date for some of the things. Those are reflected in this part of the syllabus as well too. So even though you might have first year residents, it's going to be reflected on here using any returning resident dates, just because of the way the system operates, and I'd prefer not to separate y'all out by first year residents versus returning residents, especially when you have sometimes in some communities both. It also, quite honestly, gives you a little bit of leeway to enter things later on if you need to do that. So this is an all-right guide. It gives you the due dates, but not necessarily when things start. The modules, right now we have stuff uploaded for August and September. Things will slowly start appearing for October, November, and December. Know that we will get to those hopefully by this next week and a half or so you can start seeing what is coming up in October. November, December, you probably won't see it until a little bit later in the semester. There are weekly reports on here right now, and those are still going to be due. The pain in the butt process that comes with weekly reports, and these are due to your CD or ACD, is that they change from week to week based on where things are in the syllabus. And so the week of first flight is when they will start to pop up on the syllabus. And the way that they've usually been sorted in the past, and that I'll continue to do, is to say that this is due the week of whatever week that is. So that way your CD and ACD have an idea as to what's going on. I'm trying to shorten the format of them a little bit as well too, so it doesn't feel quite as clunky. But it is just a helpful way for you to be able to come into your one-on-ones during the week, for your CD to have something that already tells them what it is that's going on with you, so that you can talk about that. They're going to go through a lot of the same questions, but it's good for them to have an idea as to what's going on in the community ahead of time for one-on-ones, and that's how the weekly reports tie in. So you'll see those pop up during the week of first flight, and slowly through the semester as things go along. Again, because they're based on the syllabus, it takes a little bit longer to put them together, but no, they're still going to be there, and I'll try to make them a little prettier than what they've been in the past. So that's the modules. That's what's here for now. There is space on here for discussions, but quite honestly, it's not a place that's really been used all that much in the past. It was used previously when this was up and running for the extended training. I don't believe, and Sarah, you can correct me here if I'm wrong, we're not going to be using this as the place to do extended training for first-time RAs. Is that correct, Sarah?
That's correct. Yeah, we're going to have a separate Canvas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this function will probably sort of shut off in some capacity. Just haven't gotten to that yet. Grades, it's pretty simple. Like any of your other courses, all of the modules will have some sort of assignment tied to them. Assignment meaning you're turning some sort of a documentation in that you did what you're supposed to do. And then it will pop up as a grade, basically as complete or incomplete. For some data purposes, I think they're all marked as 1 point. It allows me to run some stuff afterwards by having points assigned to them. But this is sort of where your CD will be able to keep track of what's being completed. Every different module has something different due. I think for this semester, I expect that we're going to rely a whole lot more on pictures of things, maybe some rosters where possible. But I'm leaning towards trying to do more qualitative information. So quality of things, pictures of things, as opposed to always having quantitative things. So just numbers, data is counting, stuff like that. There's value in both of them. I think just given this semester, in some ways, if I can lean more towards the qualitative stuff, it will make things a little bit less stressful when possible. So that's what I'm trying to do. And again, I'll give that leeway where I can to do that. And files, everything that you see labeled at some point or another in the entire Canvas section for the curriculum is all sorted here on the file. You'll have access to it. If you feel like exploring, great. There are especially some past lesson plans that could be adopted for stuff for this semester or next semester if you feel like taking a look at that. Again, we made some decisions already, but that doesn't mean we don't have the ability to change our mind on that. So if you see, something that you thought was really successful from last semester around learning, and you figured out a way, especially to make it something that can be done via Zoom, social distanced, etc., and we just missed it because that happens, then let your CD know and they'll pass the word on up, and we can hopefully move that pretty quickly. We will have a committee for the curriculum this semester to obviously finish up things for October, November, and December. And so we have an opportunity for that committee to review those lesson plans, hopefully pretty quickly. The turnaround time, and I think you'll see this for the video later, either at the end or later in Bridge, is that we need at least a 2 weeks notice of when you want to do something that might be somewhere else, something that you create, so that honestly it can be reviewed in time and then put up in time. So just know that if you feel like you found something here that works, great. If you feel like exploring, there's still materials here from last year, the 1920 syllabus, you'll see the 2021 stuff, useful documents. I think I deleted all the weekly reports. Nope, they're still there from last year. But if you feel like just going through this instead to find things, that's fine. All of it is all up in here. Any questions about anything before I start going through individual pages? Okay. Anyone on Canvas right now, like via your phone or computer? I'm not seeing any hands. How many folks have the Canvas app already? Okay. From my understanding, and maybe the returning folks can attest to this, that might be a pretty successful way to help with this is by using the Canvas app. You're probably already using it for coursework. If you haven't done that, then use it for this stuff as well too. And the nice thing is that it adds in your coursework, this stuff into the calendar as well too, knowing again that stuff on here is labeled for due dates, not for start dates. So, okay. So we're gonna go through. We're just gonna start at the beginning, and I'm gonna talk about some things that are on here, not everything necessarily, some stuff that I really just kind of want to show you as we process through. And let me make things a little bigger. All right. So just, some very general welcome language, a reminder of what a lesson plan is, and then highlighted in green so you don't miss it anywhere. This link goes to the syllabus that is over here on the left already. This link right here is the syllabus that I showed you yesterday. You can download it by clicking on here, or you can just go ahead and make it bigger by clicking on the magnifying glass. But it is right here and updated from the stuff that we talked about yesterday. If there are any changes to this, expect some sort of communication from your CD about it, and then it will be reflected on here as well too. Again, the blessing of having a system and a tool like this for us to use. This mentions that you'll find all those lesson plans organized by the files that I showed y'all. On here, and I'm going to go through one of these more specifically, you'll also find a bunch of useful documents for navigating through all of the syllabus. The health and safety during COVID-19, which is something that I'll go over in a sec. It's going to stay highlighted green for at least the semester. Checklist for things to do for your lesson plans before and after. Things to consider as you're putting on different lesson plans. A printable survey if you want feedback from your residents. How you select one. How to navigate all this. I'm going to go through that one in a second. And then a bunch of other how-to guides. How to do bulletin board. How to collaborate with other offices. How to handle hot button topic issues. Some of that language will probably be updated, honestly, on that soon. And then how to resource room. The resource room this semester is going to be pretty limited in how many folks can be there at one time. This general information will stay the same, however. So we're going to start from the top and then move our way down for all the things that we need to look at. And just for ease sake, I'm just going to download it from here, not that one, so that you can see what it looks like. So this is a PDF that talks about health and safety for this semester. Folks can still see this PDF. Get a thumbs up from SFT if they can. Yeah, okay, awesome. So this is going to apply until you're told it does not apply, quite honestly. I would like to think it only applies for this semester, but that may change as we go along. I know just yesterday I changed some language in here, which I'll talk about in a second. But these are the guidelines for basically how you do things on the curriculum in regards to COVID-19, how we try to keep each other healthy and safe as much as possible. A bunch of this language has been honestly cut and paste from things put out by the university, but hopefully done in such a way that it makes it pretty succinct to what this is all about. So you shouldn't see anything here that you won't see anywhere else. It's just sort of made a little bit more succinct. So the big things on here are about social distancing and face coverings. And the way that breaks down into how you do things on the curriculum. So in terms of social distancing, meetings and active programs should be done virtually whenever possible. That is the preferred way for us to do things. And you should do it that way whenever possible. I'm going to show you how to do things with Zoom here, because I think that might be probably the easiest, quickest way to do stuff. But you also have the option of Microsoft Teams to do all this as well too, especially I think for your one-on-one sort of meetings with your residents. I'll talk about what that looks like. I won't be able to give you a walkthrough as much as I will with the Zoom. I think most of your CDs are probably using Zoom with all of y'all. Is that kind of correct, CDs? If you can wave your arms to indicate I'm not missing the mark on that. Okay. I see some head nodding and waving of arms somewhere. Okay, good. So as much as possible, you do your programs, you do your meetings virtually. Please, 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 please do those as much as possible virtually. And I'll show you how you can get some of that up on Zoom especially. In general, we're going to be limiting large events and gatherings. If they're held, we have to follow the guidelines of social distance and mask wearing, even with social distance inside. And so that might not be what folks are going to be used to, but it's really the only way we can allow groups to gather right now. Until you hear otherwise, any meetings or active programs that are in person should not be 10 or more people. We have some exceptions, obviously, here with our staff. We're going to have one exception as well, too, with the wing meetings and your classes. But for everything else that is going on campus, it's pretty limited. And we're going to try to follow that same concept as well, too. The residence halls are a little bit of a different place, but I'm not trying to put any more risk than what's already out there right now. So no more than 10, has to be masked, has to be social distance. Honestly, for some of your residence halls as well too, you might not even be able to get up to 10 in some cases. So for instance, Joe Green, as lovely as your new building is, yeah, some of your spaces don't allow for 10 people. I know that is the case. Kerr, you might have some other places that might be doable, but definitely not every space in your building. Crumley, the conference room is a great space right now to use. It's laid out social distance in that way, especially. But even though it allows for more than 10 right now, it shouldn't be more than 10. Rollins, you have a whole bunch of spaces all around in the lounges on the floor, the multi-purpose room that you're in right now, no more than 10. Bruce, you're in the big concert hall, no more than 10. Vic, you've got a couple spaces. You're probably right at the limit with the spaces I'm thinking of. Clark, your new living room space, yeah, it's going to be a tight squeeze. So please, again, no more than 10. Who am I missing? Hansa Mozart, you've got some stuff over there, no more than 10. Is that clear? No more than 10, including yourself or any guest that you might have, like a facilitator. I suspect that this is going to go through at least August, if not, maybe even September. And the only way we can allow more folks is by doing as much social distancing as possible and mask wearing until somebody says that we can do more. I, unfortunately, am not the decision maker on that. In some ways, I don't want to be the decision maker on that either. I know my goal is to kind of push back to say, yeah, we're still going to keep things small if possible, but at least August and September, please expect that. I see a question. I'll get to that in 1 second. The other thing on this as well too, as much as you can draw your in-person gatherings, if you have any, from predetermined groups, please do that. And what I mean by these predetermined groups is that you might need to invite roommates and suite mates to come to your program specifically, and not anyone else in person. Those are sort of already predetermined groups. For places like maybe Joe Green, your pods, you can invite maybe your pod, part of that pod, to come around from those folks who share the bathroom to come, but maybe those are the only folks you actually invite to come in person to something. And for those of you who just have like a long hallway, maybe you're just inviting folks from one end of the hallway, in the middle, those who live right around you. You need to make some decisions around what that looks like. And again, if that is not a decision that you want to make, more than happy to have everything virtually for this semester, honestly. The focus on this is not going to be about quantity in any way whatsoever. It's going to be about creating connections whenever possible. And right now, virtually is, I think, the safest way to try to do that with your residents. Okay. I'm going to get to the question that I think I saw somewhere. Give me 1 second. I think that came from Rollins. Cool. I will get to the wing meetings in a second. We have a format for that I will share with y'all. But I will tell you what that looks like based on the guidance we've also been given from the university around that too. This other point is that, again, most places have had the seating adjusted to align with the social distancing. If not, then you need to make sure that's being monitored and watched. Your CD is also measured out roughly how many folks fit into some of the spaces that you have. Please work with them. They will have those numbers as well too, so that you can know how many folks are safe to bring into that space. And then if we get to a place in which we're able to hold larger gatherings, it's still going to be limited by the size of the spaces that you have. It's still going to be limited by the size of the spaces that you have. Even with some of our outdoor events that we might normally do, until the state tells us otherwise as well, we're not going to be putting on any sort of events or functions outside of more than 10 people. That is a state mandate as well too. So that fits into that as well too. So when you're even thinking about how can I make my program in person and outside to be extra safe, know that there's still that state limitation as well too, that we are not going to push back against right now. Okay. So I'll get to wing meetings a little bit later as I get to lesson plans. Face coverings are required at your in-person things. They're also obviously required basically in any facilities. The way that I would translate that is that when folks are in their room, that's when they can take off their mask. If they are walking down the hallway to the bathroom, they need to put on their mask. So know that that is sort of the strict standard that we are kind of working to. They're also required, even when you're outside, if you can't maintain social distance of 6 feet or more. Even then, I would still, honestly, if you can get your residents to still wear them outside, I would encourage that as well too. Just because you don't know when that social distancing might all of a sudden go from 6 feet to 2 feet because somebody ran across the way or you've got cross traffic or things like that. So face coverings required inside our facilities, except for private spaces. That is going to be rooms for sure. And then outside, if you can maintain social distance, you don't have to, but I would recommend it. If you are presenting in some way, you can remove your face covering, but only really for demonstration purposes. The example that they give here is around playing an instrument. I would say you can have a little bit of room to take off your mask, take a deep breath, especially if you're talking in front of a group. That being said, then it should go back on. I can't think of any active programs that we would do that sort of fit into these demonstration purposes. But I just kind of want to put that in there because that's the language the university is using. All of this stuff right here, I'm not going to go through exactly, but basically it's how you navigate non-compliance from folks who are not wearing masks. And the short of it is, please don't document them. Please don't send them to DOS. Please don't call the police on them. If they need a mask, please help them get a mask. I'm going to try to make sure that there are disposable masks at each of the desks for folks to use in case they forget one. I know I'm probably not the first person to make it outside my where I live and to forget my mask inside. That's going to happen. But please try to help them get a mask. If they refuse to wear a mask, then honestly, I would say then they should come back later. They should probably not be at the program. We don't have a lot of guidance around being able to allow for social distance at a lot of our spaces right now. We may be able to get to that later. We have a few exceptions. I'm thinking again of like Bruce Concert Hall. You can definitely fit more than 10 in there. Maybe they can sit in the back of the room. But I think for the most part, for most of the spaces that y'all are in, it might be a good time for them to come back later with a mask when they can wear one. Okay. If they're unable to wear a mask for various reasons, if it's due to a disability, try to make an appropriate exception at the time. There's some language in here that's a little tricky around that, but also make sure that you refer them to the Office of Disability Services if that's something that they bring up. I honestly, based on the research that's been out there from your age group, generally speaking, I do not think that's going to be as much an issue. I honestly trust your generation of folks a little bit more than some other generations of folks, myself included, I would say in there as well too, my generation. I think you get it more. I know you're not as happy with it either. I don't think anyone is, but I think you get it more. I think you realize how important it is. And I trust that that is going to be the case with most other people. So um, please do your best to manage that. And if you need help, please bring in your CD, obviously, to help with that. For food, excuse me, we really shouldn't be doing food in the same way that we might normally have been doing with active programs. If you've been to the dining hall, you've seen sort of how they've radically changed their service, you know, the takeout options, things like that. We probably shouldn't be doing the same sort of service that they're providing at the dining halls. We should be providing probably something more of grab and go meal options. We should be trying to avoid buffet or definitely for sure self-serve stations because you're using the same utensil that somebody else might have been using to serve themselves. The best option for that might be that you serve them in some capacity, but again, it gets a little tricky in there. So what you might want to lean more towards to are some grab and go kind of things. What does that mean? Well, it might mean that you buy small bags of chips for everyone to take, or small bags of little candy. It might mean that you work with dining services to see if they can do, you know, like little bags of Rice Krispie treats. You've seen the desserts at Bruce, for instance, you've seen that they've sort of done that. Those are kind of to-go kind of meal options you should be looking at. That's going to bust your budget in some cases a little bit. Right now, the budgets are still the same for programming. But honestly, I also expect that because you're also going to have smaller attendance at things, if you have in person, you might be able to stretch your dollar out a little bit more for some of these more grab and go meal options as well too. So there's a pro and a con to that. We're going to have smaller numbers of people. We can't do food in the same way, but because we're going with possibly more costlier options for food, because there's not as many people there, we can afford to do that possibly. So, you know, balancing that out again, and this is if you only want to do in-person things as well too. And then use disposable plates and utensils if that's what you're doing. Make sure that is happening as well too. So you should be referring to this document every time there is some sort of thing going on with the curriculum, just to make sure that you're not missing anything. I would say especially towards your meetings and any in-person programs that you might hold throughout this semester. All right, I'm going to close that. I'm going to go back to this. I'm going to scroll through a couple of these really quickly. Again, the checklist, considerations document, the printable survey, selecting a lesson plan. I do want to bring this up. I'm just going to download it. Easier for you all to see that way. And shout out to Caitlin Poe for putting this, quite honestly, all together last year during her time working with us for the summer. A lot of this has stayed over from that. There's a lot of formatting and what I like to call prettifying that I think is going to continue to be useful. So thank you, Caitlin, for doing that part of the prettifying process. So all of the lesson plans have a bunch of symbols on them that will hopefully be helpful as you try to choose things. There's budget symbols that let you know how much things cost. If it's a check mark, it's free. If it's $1 sign, less than 20, 2, 20 to 40, 3, 40 plus, 4, 100 plus. I do not suspect that we have that many lesson plans, especially because we don't have any entire staff programs right now that are within the 100 plus range at all. So just know that this is what those symbols mean, and you should see them on the top section. You will see again on the lesson plans, the titles, what the value is, the learning outcome, what type of program it is, the budget symbol, and then the logo for that value. And I'll show you those all in a sec as to what they look like. And that should be this one. And again, just as a reminder for, what our values is and how they are color-coded on here and iconified, collaboration, puzzle pieces, it is purple. Diversity inclusion is a rosewood color using the eagle. Learning is gold using the light bulb. And then sense of belonging is blue using a home. And so you'll see that color coding and these icons at the top of the lesson plans depending on the value. The titles of the lesson plans are also divided up by the values as well too, so you know what it is that you're actually going to be doing. I think I saw a question. Let me just double check if there was one. If there was.
It was Caitlin saying thank you.
Okay, cool. All right. And then down here again are just a couple of how-to things for you to pay attention to. All right, let's get into the details of the modules. And I'm going to show you this from the student side, so that way you kind of see things. I find going through the module format that this is the maybe one of the easier ways to navigate it, but I still also go back to that Word document that has the syllabus broken down by start dates as the other way too. So the first thing that y'all have is a bulletin board. Pretty simple. We needed to really develop and be specific about what those bulletin boards look like for when folks got here. Took in some feedback as well too as to what might normally happen so that we could fold that into the options that are selected. And we basically have 3 bulletin boards that folks can select from. Excuse me, an About Me bulletin board, which I am absolutely sure that y'all have done or will do at some point or another, either this semester or next semester. Pretty simple in terms of, actually I'm going to close it that way. It has all the things here, again, what value it is, who created it, when it was created, the materials that you need, and then the information that should be on here. The things in yellow are, I think, the minimum, if I remember correctly. And then there's 3 other questions that you can include as well too that can be scrolled down if you look through it a little bit more. So that I think is probably the simplest lesson plan that you're going to have hopefully for this semester is your introduction kind of bulletin boards. The It's On You bulletin board is around health specifically and talks about, again, COVID-19, goes through a bunch of things that we want you to highlight. Not necessarily all of these smaller bullet points, but definitely these bigger bullet points here. So you're not having to go find this information on the CDC website separately, which is a whole pain in the butt to navigate, as the committee can testify to, Alex, Laura, and Daniel. So we've tried to minimize that for you, and this is what you can select from. Read the instructions as to what it is that you want to do. And again, some ways to do that. And one more, I'm just going to show you the virtual reality bulletin board is talking about online courses. And so this information was pulled from Tips for Succeeding at Your Online Classes, specifically from UNT's website. And again, you choose 5 to 7 tips to incorporate how it is that makes the most sense for y'all, depending on the bulletin boards that you might have. And again, this is all included for y'all to navigate through and for you to choose so that you're not having to find it somewhere else. For the select fewish of you that have more than one bulletin board, if you want to select more than one of these to do in your communities, you are more than welcome to do that. You decide which one you want to sort of count and turn in as part of this, and I'm going to show you in a second what that looks like. But if you have more than one bulletin board, you can select all of these if you want to put up. And so please feel free to do that. If you only have one bulletin board, obviously you only need to put one up. For those of you who do not have bulletin boards in the traditional sense, meaning you don't have the cork board that is there for you to hang things on, I'm going to ask that you find a place on a wall that makes the most sense for you to use butcher paper to put up, and that you use that as the place for that to count as the bulletin board. Please know as well, I think this is Maple, Rollins, and Clark, who I think are the main folks on that. Or did we get Rollins up? I can't remember if we did. We did in time? Okay.
No, we didn't.
Okay. Then we're going to be revisiting that again as we revisit budgets post September 1. That kind of threw us the F off for being able to get those things in time over the summer. But September 1, I think we'll be able to visit that again. So for this assignment, what you're going to read through as you see this is when things need to be up, how long it needs to stay up as a bulletin board, and then what you actually need to turn in. So you need to submit a photo or a video of the completed bulletin board by August the 12th in the submit section of this page, which would normally be down here. This was already turned in as an example. I'll show you what that looks like. But once you turn it in, then it's something that your CD will be able to see on the other side of things. And then they'll be able to go in and grade it, meaning they'll mark it as complete or incomplete. So whatever you decide to turn in, just make sure that it's as clear as it can be, that it captures the entire bulletin board as best as possible. If you need to take more than one picture and collage them in some way, please feel free to do that. The video was an option as well too, because sometimes it's a little bit more interactive for you to like zoom out, zoom in, go through the details of things. I leave that up to you as how to best do that. I know, I think it was somebody at College Inn last year, because they have a lot of their bulletin boards behind glass. What they actually did was they took a picture of it before they put it in the glass case, and then a picture of it in the glass case, because there was a pretty significant difference in terms of what it looked like out of the case and inside the case. Some folks just honestly took a picture of it before they put it up, because they literally put it on one giant piece of paper and then they posted it up later. And then remember as well too, especially if you're trying to figure out how to fill your bulletin board spaces as you're going through the semester, if you feel like you have something that other folks want to use and you want to rotate it through to fill in other bulletin board spaces throughout the semester, feel free to do that. This person right here, for instance, this is all one giant ass piece of paper that they are using. And I'm more than sure that all they have to do is peel it off and pass it off to the next person who probably has a bulletin board roughly the same size and shape as well too. Okay. I'm also assuming you can see this picture. Is that correct, Sarah?
No, I'm not seeing any picture. I think it popped up in a different screen.
Give me a second.
So we're only seeing your screen.
Yeah. So previous bulletin board from a previous institution. So just giving you an example of what something could look like. This might be a bit much, but I know there's a lot of you that want to do stuff like this. Feel free to do that. I know other folks like myself do not have the ability to always get to stuff like this. Okay, I'm going to get back.
Like a work of art.
Yeah. And again, once you submit it, your CD will go through and grade it, and then mark it as complete. You get a point. Again, that's more of a data purpose thing on my side. and then it's good to go. Please make sure you turn stuff in on time. They also have the ability to give you feedback. So you'll see down here, this person, this fake student wrote in what the bulletin board was about. It was the About Me bulletin board. And then their CD responded, said, "This looks great, appreciate all the hard work." So hopefully your CDs can do that. If not, I hope they will be able to tell you that verbally as well too. Let's move on to, and what time do I have till 11:30?
Yep.
Okay. Opening meetings, because these are going to be a hefty thing and very different from what we've done, as is everything from previous years. So returning folks, please pay attention. New folks, pretend you don't know about what these look like. You may remember them from last year as well too, but they're going to be different from what we've done before. So I will open up the lesson plan here in a second in a separate page so you can see it. But really our opening wing meetings are the only time that there is any expectation of you doing anything in person. For most of you, it's only going to be one time. For a handful of you, it's going to be 2 times that you're going to have in-person meetings, and I'm going to go into why that is with some numbers around that. And then almost all of y'all are probably going to do some sort of online version of this as well too. So I'm going to walk you through also how you set up your Zoom. The instructions are in this document too. So if you get a little lost as I'm walking through it, know that the instructions are here too. For all of you who have first-year students that are coming in, your opening meetings are going to be effectively done by that Wednesday after we open the halls. Some of your opening meetings may start on Monday. Most of you will have them on Tuesday, and then there'll be a good number on Wednesday as well. All the Wednesday ones are going to be online. The Tuesday one is where we're going to have the heaviest load of them, and I'll go through what the schedule looks like for that, the draft schedule in a second. For those RAs who have returning students, your wing meetings don't need to happen until the 28th at the latest. That's when they're due. Your community meetings need to be online. You will not be able to have them in person, okay? What you're gonna turn in for that is you're gonna do your best to turn in a photo or a video of that meeting. I trust y'all's ability to take appropriate snapshots of that. And you're going to turn in a roster of who did not attend the meeting. That might be the simplest way to do that, as opposed to trying to keep track of everyone that did in terms of what I receive information-wise. So have a roster of who is in your community. Make sure you're marking who it is that attended, but all I'm going to need at the end of the day is who did not actually attend. And so I'll show you what that format's going to look like in a sec as well too. Let me download this so you can see it. Is that mostly visible by folks? Okay. So again, title, what value, the learning outcome, symbols, it's free. When it was updated, who wrote it originally, when it was updated, the objectives, the rationale, and preparing for this. So here are some things that you will need to prepare for. A sign-up sheet and a roster. A computer, correct that, laptop or phone that has a setup for a mic and a camera. And then a copy of the lesson plan. There's a healthy amount of stuff to kind of walk through here. So I would honestly strongly suggest that you print this out. Even when you're doing it virtually, it might be a good idea for you to print it out, or at the very least have it on the screen ready for it to go. If you are used to trying to do a meeting where you're doing this, that's probably not going to work because there's a lot of information. So I would strongly suggest you just print out the lesson plan and save yourself some straining on your eyesight if you're going to try to do it by your phone. Okay. So the things to consider if you have first-year residents, it's going to be a combination for many of you of in-person and online. And returning students are going to have only online meetings. There's a considerations document that you should refer to. There are some resources here for virtual icebreakers because that is not a thing that we are used to. So I think in total, there's probably over 60 or so icebreakers that you can look through here on these 3 links for when you get to your virtual meeting. Again, returning folks who have returning students, that's where you're going to go to. Almost everyone who has first-year students expect to do this at some point as well too. And then before move-in, so basically this next week as we're ramping up, here's some things that you need to do. You need to create a sign-in sheet, and I'll show you the schedule in a second so you have some ideas to what the sign-in sheet might look like. For your open wing meetings, for the ones that you're going to have in person, and I would say even for the ones that you're going to have online. And in these things, and especially for the in-person meetings, you need to follow and mark the exact number of residents that you're allowed to have. So if you create a sign-up sheet and you're told that you can only have 10 residents, you only need to create 10 spaces for folks to sign up. If somebody goes in and writes 11 and their name down, you need to let them know, I'm sorry, can you come to the other open wing meeting or can you attend online? I do not want anyone who's not supposed to be there or any more folks there than what you've indicated. So on your sign-up sheet, make sure that you're following those numbers, and I will show you kind of what information you're going to receive in order to give you a sense of that. If you're holding your meeting online, which again is probably going to be most of you, I'm going to walk you through how you set up a Zoom link in order to do that. And the nice part about setting up the Zoom link for this now is that you can use that for the entire semester for any active programs that you have, for meeting with your residents one-on-one. You can personalize it as well too. So I'm going to go through and try to show you that right now. One second. I'll put that in a new tab. So you'll see the link here, unt.zoom.us. Should look like this. And there is a sign in here. As employees, you should have access to something like this. Even as a student, you should have access to something like this as well too. Excuse me. And where you're going to need to go is your profile. On your profile, there are 2 really important things for you to use. The first thing you can use is a personal meeting ID, which is this right here. You can show it, and you can use that as the link that you give people. That's probably all right. What you can also do, and this is what I might suggest, is that you can customize it into something more digestible. So for instance, I think in the example that I name here, Kurt A. Wing North 1. Or just your name, or Victory Squad is awesome. Or West Side Best Side RA1. So however you decide to do that, I think this is probably a better choice than necessarily trying to give them this number to remember. This might be a little bit better. I would also suggest, and I did not include a link to anything here specifically because there's a whole crap load of options to select from. Create a QR code for whatever that link is and have that available on your door as part of what folks are using to sign up for if they're signing up for the online meeting. And then honestly, as a way for them to reach you, or if you're scheduling one-on-one meetings, that's the link that they're going to go to in order to be able to meet with you. So this should stay active. This is an easier way to do that as opposed to, you know, going through this site, scheduling a meeting, joining a meeting. You can do that if you really want to, but honestly, this is probably the better way. There's a few things in here around settings and security. Please feel free to explore this. I think as we get towards our programs especially, it's going to be important just to make sure that things are on here like waiting room so that you can sort of identify who it is that's actually coming in. If you want to require a passcode for some of your programs, you can do that as well too. Even for an Insta meeting, you can do that. And even for your personal meeting ID, if that's a concern that you have as well too. Again, I think probably the easiest thing to do around this is to make sure that it's really only your residents to know that you're using a QR code. And if you have some security concerns, this is where you kind of go through to change some of that information. The other thing that you can use, and I'm not going to go through it because it's a little bit more of a process, but as employees, all of you have access to Outlook and to Microsoft Teams. Microsoft Teams is probably what your CDs and ACDs are going to be using to meet with you on a regular basis, either for your one-on-ones or for staff meetings. You can honestly use that tool as well. I would say that it is probably better a tool for one-on-ones. So if a student wants to meet with you, basically they can call you on that. Or if you have like a roommate dispute that they want to help mediate, you can do that via Teams. Teams is probably a little bit better for some of the smaller group functions as opposed to Zoom. Zoom has a little bit more functionality for large group settings, sort of like this. I can see everyone on my screen. If you're getting up to 20 or so residents or more, you should be able to see anyone, even if you have to scroll off to the side. For Microsoft Teams, I think you only are able to see 9 at a time right now. And then everyone else is at the bottom and they kind of rotate through randomly based on if they're saying things or not. So Zoom is a little bit more functional for, again, your wing meetings, for your programs, things like that. All right. I'm going to scroll through this some more. So the day of the lesson of this open meeting that you have, review the appropriate icebreaker that you're going to use based on the space or the format that you're using. Again, as you're coming up with icebreakers, and especially for the ones that are in person, make sure that they are working around social distancing. Many of the icebreakers that we have already as resources can allow for social distance. Some are not going to be allowing for that in any way whatsoever. You know, no human knots, no sort of games of tag or anything like that. No hand holding, like we really can't do those sorts of things. We can move from space to space, but even then I'd be a little wary as to what that looks like. Just know that you're gonna have to do a little bit of thinking about this for your icebreaker. And honestly, as long as it gets everyone's name and something new to know about them that we might not known about them before, that's the minimal standard. We're not looking at like a, you know, intense retreat, tell us the deepest, darkest secret about you kind of icebreaker. We just want to know like what your major is, and you know, which town are you coming from? Where were you before you came to UNT? Stuff like that. So you can keep it light, you can keep it simple, and that's really the expectation. Introduce yourself, who are you, what you do, how you help residents. However you need to define that in your own words, okay? New folks, if you feel like you need assistance with that, check in with the returning folks, check in with your CD, ACD, but however it is that you feel it's appropriate to describe what it is that you do, even during these unprecedented times. please figure out the wording for that. Again, select the icebreaker and talk about this concept of community living, that we're going to be stressing the importance of health and safety, respect, approaching neighbors to resolve issues, communicating things with the RAs, roommate, suite mate communication, that community living is a unique experience. And especially right now, we need to be very conscious of how it is that we live with other folks. And that communication is going to be a big part of that. You're going to get then into the chunk of it, and it's probably going to take a little bit longer than what you may have been used to if you're returning. I've marked on here 40 minutes. I do think that this is probably going to take about an hour total, which is going to include, the 5 or so minutes to get in place, 5 to 10 minutes for an icebreaker, and then I think honestly about 40 minutes or so to kind of get through this stuff. As you're going through this stuff, what I would strongly recommend that you do is you take notes. As folks have questions, they're gonna interrupt you probably at some point or another. Even the first year residents who are a little bit more aligned to like hold back the questions, they're still gonna have questions throughout. Take notes, and if you don't know the answer, say that you don't know the answer to that. That is all right. What's going to be important is that you get them the answer, in the next 24 hours or so. But it's all right to say, you know what, I don't know that. Let me check into that. Let me look into that. So it's all right to say that. And again, especially right now as things shift from what feels like, day to day, hour to hour, every once in a while, it's all right to say, I don't know, I think that may have changed. Let me look into it. So you're going to start off by emphasizing the thing that's the most important right now, and that's around health and safety as it relates to COVID-19. And that if folks want to have a more normal spring semester, if they want their friends who are they just making and meeting right now and their families to be safe, that these are the things that they need to do. I talked about this language the other day when talking about COVID-19. That is the kind of language that you should be using. If we want to have a more normal spring semester, if we want to keep our friends and family safe, the folks that you're meeting here for the first time, then these are the things we need to do. And there's a checklist of those things. You've heard the first 4 things already numerous times from me. The fly with your flock is some new language that I'm introducing to you right now. So these are pretty similar to some language that you've heard before. Basically, it is those sort of natural groups that are forming because of natural geographic locations within your residence halls. And it's going to be important for those flocks to stick together for at least the first week of school, including meal locations. This is a little bit of a leftover thing from First Flight, which we'll talk about, I think, next week, if I remember correctly.
Yes, Andrea's going over First Flight after we go over move-in.
Okay. One of the things that was going to happen with First Flight when it was still possibly going to be in person was that, in the past, y'all as RAs were responsible for having groups of people, small groups. Those small groups are going to basically function right now as flocks. All of our first year residents are going to get wristbands that are basically going to say, if you have this wristband, please stick together as much as possible. Please go, if you're going to have meals, please have them at the same time with the flock that you're having. Here are the instructions, the locations for where those things are going to be, which again, Andrea is going to go over as we talk about First Flight stuff next week. And basically, you just need to tell your folks, stick with your flock as much as possible, especially as we go through this first week, including meals. And for those of you who have returning students, I think they probably would appreciate some other language that says, can we stick with the people that you know, stick with the people that you live with as much as possible. Let's limit visitations with each other. Your returning students, you all know this as returning students yourselves, are not going to be as naive. It might be too harsh a language to use as your first year residents. Your first year residents are going to be a little bit more likely to just kind of listen to what you're saying. Your returning students, what you can say with them, honestly, is we need you to stick together so that if something happens more around COVID-19, we don't want to discover that you're hanging around 20 random ass people around campus, that instead you're sticking with your suite mates and your neighbors next to you, and that was it. That makes sense to folks? Again, your sophomores, returning students are probably a little bit more open to that harshness than maybe your first year residents. And they'll actually, again, your first year residents will have some more instruction than your returning residents. Your returning residents are not going to be getting this kind of stuff. And because they usually return a little bit later before classes start, they'll sort of cycle through the meal routine that we're trying to go through with first year residents. You need to emphasize this point, and again, I shared it with y'all earlier this week, is that if at any point you have symptoms around what could be COVID-19, you call the COVID hotline. Tell them to get their phone out and to put that number in their phone. Tell them to get their phone out and to put that number in their phone. And if they have any of these symptoms here, that they call the COVID-19 hotline, and the hotline will tell them what to do. The hotline will tell them what to do. All right, let me make sure there's not any questions. Okay, we're good. So I suspect that's going to take about 20 minutes at least, right there, that part. Roommate success plans. For those of you who are returning, you know what these kind of look like. These are how folks decide to live together, things that are how they're going to share stuff, etc. This is a little bit different this year. There's been some change in how things have been ordered, some of the questions that are being asked. The first thing that's being asked is around health, hygiene, and cleanliness. I'm going to show you the document in a second. About visitors, guests, and travel, how they communicate with each other, and then use of belongings in the room. You can give them the roommate success plan electronically later. You don't need to print out a copy for them. It is absolutely fine to give them an electronic copy later. Your rosters that you will have their email addresses at some point. Your CDs will have probably larger access to that information. The one thing I'm going to tell you about email addresses and having access to that information is that you should not be creating, de facto listservs. Teams is your best way to communicate with your residents in mass because it's an official function of the university. But please do not be creating, when you have access to their emails, their student emails, do not be creating de facto listservs. Especially because stuff can blow up in that sort of setting. And not that we wouldn't follow up with that, but it can blow up there. It's a pain in the butt. Use it for the official communication of, hey, here's your lesson plan. Remember to BCC people so that not everyone sees each other's email either. You can get them the roommate success plan electronically. It is also not going to be due until September the 18th, so about a month after they've lived together and figured out their stuff. We want to give them some time to complete this. There are parts in there that also apply to having suite mates. Mostly that's around bathroom cleanliness. But again, if they have suite mates, their suite mates should be figuring this out as well with them. I'm going to show you really quickly what it looks like. Just load up here. It is a 2-page document with plenty of blank space. They do not have to go question by question. It would be helpful for them to do that. And again, because it's in a Word document and because you're sending it to them electronically, they're more than welcome to go beyond just those 2 pages that they have as well. If they need to extend it to a 3rd page, 4th page, please let them do that. And then you're going to go through our housing and residence life policy. There's a lot of stuff on here, most of which you know. The biggest things right now, visitation policy, no further visitors from outside of the residence hall that you live in. And hopefully we can resolve that as quickly as possible, but that is a big thing that is going on right now. For folks who are returning, we probably have some language in there last year around fire and tornado drills. Again, letting them know that they'll receive more information the first week of classes around fire and tornado drills electronically, and that we're basically doing an online quiz to let them know what those alarms sound like, and that will tell them where to go. They'll receive that the first week of classes. You will receive notification that those go out. You're not sending them out yourself. We're going to use our larger e-housing system to do that. So you won't need to send it out to them or anything like that. We will take care of that on our side of things. Stuff around where to take out trash, that fish are the only pets allowed in the halls without prior approval. So if folks have comfort animals, if folks have a service animal, those are obvious exceptions, but pets are the only animals allowed without permission or prior approval, excuse me. What's prohibited right now in terms of appliances, make sure you're reviewing the housing policy around that on the UNT Housing website. Where to park, what lockouts look like, losing your student ID, to not use the emergency exit doors unless it's an actual emergency, lest the alarm go off in most places, and that if they have work order requests, they can call up to the front desk to report those problems. Some general safety stuff, basically lock your door, make sure you're responsible for the bathroom door between suite mates as well too. Those are not lockable right now, and that you keep track of things. At check-in, they're going to receive some information about mailboxes that everyone can get at the union. Please make sure that they review that information, because what happens is that we have more than enough mailboxes for everyone on campus, but a lot of folks don't go in to get those mailboxes and to claim them. So please encourage them to claim them. They'll also get that information and check in. Thank your residents. Answer any questions that they have. If you don't know the answer, let them know. I'm not sure. I don't know about that. Let me look into it and let me get back to you sometime tomorrow. It's all right to say, I do not know that. And then because you're going to have more than most of you are going to have more than one wing meeting, take note of what went well so that you can make any adjustments for the next one, if you happen to have more than one wing meeting. And then there's a check after the lesson plan checklist that will show you what to do next. All right, and again, you're submitting a photo and a roster of who did not attend. Go ahead and download this document. I'm not going to show it to you, download it now, but the format that you're basically going to turn it in is an Excel document that has their ID, their first name, and their last name of who did not attend. So again, that will probably be pretty minimal, I think, for most of our first year communities. For our returning communities, those numbers might be a little larger is what I'm going to guess, especially because you're only going to be allowed to do online meetings. All right, I'm going to take a brief pause. Any questions? Okay. Do folks need a quick 2-minute break? I really do mean like 2 minutes. Okay, I'm not seeing most folks move. If you need to move, please do that. This is again also being recorded, so if you need to refer to it later, it is there for you to refer to. I am going to show you what the schedule is roughly looking like. This will be updated by hopefully Tuesday of next week at the latest. Let me make sure I am sharing it with you though.
There it is.
Yep. So you'll receive something a little prettier than this, not by much, I'll be honest, because it's a lot of information. But what we have here is a breakdown of all the residence halls, all of your communities, and then when your meetings are going to be, either that Monday, which is the 17th, 16th, 17th, that Tuesday, or that Wednesday of move-in. And then what time those meetings are going to be and where they're going to be as well too. So it's going to be the 17th, the 18th, and the 19th. You're going to see that for your in-person meetings, if you have them, and you'll know they're in person because there's a room that has been indicated as such, will tell you how many residents you're allowed to have at that meeting. Almost everyone is going to be allowed to have 25 folks on Tuesday. And then on Wednesday, there are no online meetings. Excuse me, there are no in-person meetings, only online. If somebody was supposed to come, they signed up to come to the Monday or Tuesday meeting and they didn't, and you have an online meeting scheduled, then they should go to the online meeting instead. There's a few exceptions for that, and that's really because the communities are so small. Hopefully all those folks are already going to be moving in by the time we actually hold these community meetings on that Monday and that Tuesday. If they don't, again, they can either come to the online meeting later, or you can just fill them in person later on. In-person meeting virtually, of course. Some of you, because of your larger communities, are going to have 3 meetings on that Monday, that Tuesday, and Wednesday. Most of y'all are just going to have 2, 1 in person and 1 virtually. And for the times, you need to stick to the time that is indicated. They are specifically indicated for that time so that we do not have as many folks leaving the buildings at the same time together, that you're avoiding each other as much as possible, basically. So you need to respect the time that has been put on there. When possible, I've tried to keep it as close as possible, but honestly, we're also limited on spaces and where we can do things. So some people, you're going to find yourself traveling a little bit. I think the furthest I found was maybe about 10, 12 minutes. Some folks might be traveling. As that is happening, please make sure they are also traveling as socially distant as possible. Okay. This is not up yet because there are some changes that are still coming along from the union, especially. That's why some of the things are highlighted in blue. A couple of places are still happening in the residence halls based on information shared with how many folks can be there. If folks are seeing some things in here that are concerning CDs as this gets out, I think especially, please let me know if I'm wrong about these numbers, and if I need to make changes, I can make changes. We can figure out something else to do. Going back to the question that was asked earlier about meetings being held outside, what limits us is honestly what the state mandate is around outside gatherings of 10 people or more. That we can't have outside gatherings of 10 people or more. And so unless you know for sure that you're going to have less than 10 people show up, including yourself, then that's why we can't have them outside. Where possible, and I'm going to look at Victory for this because they are the ones who have to travel the most, despite it being a pain for everyone to travel to some locations. Victory trying to hold things at you for Gateway, which is probably the closest we can get you on this side of the highway, and or we're trying to get you into some of the stadium areas as well too. Just waiting on confirmation for that. So what I would suggest almost everyone does, because you'll be able to see here, I think it's safe for everyone to create probably some sort of sign-up sheet, some sort of Zoom link, a QR code for that Zoom link for an online meeting, time to be filled in later, but expect between 6:30, or 7 p.m. Try to make that uniform so you're at least doing the same night every night. If you happen to have more than one in-person meeting, trying to make that location the same each time so you're not traveling anywhere different. And then again, also at the same time when possible. Not always possible in every case. This is the only time I expect you to have in-person meetings. This is the only time we've been allowed to have in-person meetings. If you have folks that simply do not show up, and instead they're opting to go to the online version of your wing meeting, absolutely fine. That is absolutely fine. I suspect that's going to be the case for a lot of folks. Maybe not everyone, but for a lot of folks. Some people want to see each other. We're allowing this one opportunity for that to happen in a formalized way. But this is the only time I expect you to have, and that you're being allowed to have more than the 10 numbers that was indicated earlier as we went through programs. Okay. All right. I'm going to move back over really quickly. I know I'm almost at time.
There was one question in the chat. I'm pretty sure you've already answered it, but just to reiterate, so Rollins asked, we've been allotted our wing days and times, and then we'll provide the sign up for our residents.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you provide the sign up. Yeah. And I see maybe a question from West Side, Best Side.
I think they're trying to type it in the chat.
Yep. Okay.
I'll read it so that it's recorded.
Sure. I'm going to move on to the intentional conversations because I just want to at least get to this a little bit. Intentional conversations, for those of you who are returning, you know what those are. Those are intentional meetings that you have with your students to go through a series of questions. You word those in the way that you need to word them. This is definitely, at times, very Tomás-esque student affairs, higher ed kind of language. Even as I've tried to make it just normal speak, quote unquote. So you develop the language in this. None of these need to be online, or excuse me, in person. They can all be done online. These are the ones that might work a little bit better through Microsoft Teams, but if you have that Zoom link up and going, then use that as a way for you to have those meetings. The lesson plan for that is in here. I'm going to pull that up in a sec. There is a separate link that basically asks you to submit information for every time you have an intentional conversation with your resident. These need to be completed for first-year residents by October the 2nd, for returning residents because they tend to move in later by October the 9th. Okay, these are separate from the student success meetings that I talked about yesterday. And you'll see this here. You'll see it's free when it was updated. The language that's in here, what you need to do a day ahead of time, 15, 20 minutes before, AKA if you're having it online, making sure your equipment works. How you begin the conversation, and that basically everything highlighted in green are the questions you need to ask more specifically, maybe a little bit less your language, although you can modify it, because that is the information that you're going to end up turning in. Okay. I trust your ability to know how to have conversations with people, or else you would not have been hired or rehired for these positions. But I need this kind of information that is highlighted in green. And this allows for some space as well too, for if they didn't answer the question, or if honestly the conversation didn't get to that. Okay. If the conversation didn't get into that because they started talking about how homesick they were, and it turned into a let me get you resources on campus kind of conversation, and you didn't get to ask if they completed their roommate success plan, then you didn't get to ask it. Okay. But but the green parts are what I would love for you to be able to get to. So please do your best. Speaking of homesickness in all this, your information from last year was, and this is being recorded, right? Okay, yeah. Your information around this was fucking awesome. This really helped us. And I'm going to name this in this sense. One of the questions last year was around homesickness. Are you feeling homesick? I think we got something like 3,000 responses to that from all of y'all. And what we basically found out is that percentage-wise, only 4.5% of students indicated that they're homesick. The national average around that is a little bit all over the place. It's anywhere from 5 to 20%. It's a little bit hard to get a sense as to how that applies to students who live in the residence halls only. But the fact that we can sort of say that, yeah, only 4.5% of our students said they're homesick, that seems to be either below the average or at the very least on the lower end of the average, is, I think, a testament to how folks feel about coming to UNT, but then more importantly, honestly, how they feel about living with y'all and living with the people that they have in their residence halls. So thank you for that information from last year. It's why this kind of stuff is important, so that we can sort of say we're doing something great, or quite honestly, oh no, we're not doing something great. The RA's got us this information and that says otherwise. So it's not stuff that stays dead. It actually goes somewhere. You try to do stuff with it every year. And that homesickness part especially was something that we can brag about a little bit. I know that we are right at time, if not a minute over, it looks like.
I think we could probably still give a few minutes for questions.
Okay, yeah, and I want to just sort of see all that. Thank you.
Okay. I'll read out the one from Wes. So the question seems to be why we are meeting in person for wing meetings in some small groups versus doing it all online. And then the reasoning behind having no more than 10 people in a room at a time during programs as we move into the semester, but having that exception during RLT.
That is the exception that we've been allowed to have. And that is not an exception that is made at my level only. It is an exception made at vice president, committee kind of levels. And so that is where those exceptions have been made. From past this week period that we're in right now, as we're in RLT and as we get through opening, again, I do not expect anything else to be in person, quite honestly. That you keep them as minimal as possible. It's why we've taken out inspections, why we are not doing tornado and fire drills in any way in person. It's why you're not doing your on-call at the desk anymore. Where we can cut that out, we've done that. Where we've been allowed and put the expectations to have things in person is at the very beginning, and that's it. And that is honestly to try to make sure that folks are, when they get here, and I think especially around the COVID-19 stuff, they understand how big of a deal this is. And unfortunately, some of that can only be done by saying that to them. And y'all, and I really mean this at the RA level, all the way up to the CD and the AD level in front of me as well too, are some of the main communicators around that. So that's where that has to begin.
Okay, I don't want to go too much past time, but I'm not seeing anyone really come up to the screen. Are there any other questions? I don't see any. I think we're good.
Okay. All right, thank you, folks. I know that's a lot of information. Please go into Canvas and start looking at stuff. We did not get to the video, so please complete that on Bridge, so that you can propose your own lesson plans as need be. And expect to see, I think, more updates to Canvas as we go into next week, especially for the active and passive programs. And then as we get for October, you'll see stuff pop up over the next couple of weeks past first flight. Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone, and have a good rest of the day.